Fear crushes your confidence. Fear tells you that you can't do something. Think of what fear does to your relationships. If you're afraid to love someone unconditionally, you're afraid to confront something that's going on, fear can ruin your relationships, even the people that you love the most. Fear can paralyze your potential. It can keep you from moving forward and taking a risk. If you're a follower of Jesus Christ, you are living life on faith, and faith requires taking risks. If you want the life God has for you, it involves risk. But fear will paralyze you. It'll freeze you. Fear will also hinder you from becoming happy. It'll become an obstacle in your way where should I or shouldn't I? I don't know, and I'm not confident, and so I'm not gonna do anything. It paralyzes you, it hinders you, and it ruins the things that matter the most to you. Fear crushes our confidence. You know what that's like, to have your confidence crushed? To feel like you're not good enough? Then you're in the right place today, because it doesn't have to be that way. I want you to lean into the power of fear so that you can find confidence somewhere else, because what you find confidence in will determine how much fear will crush your confidence. And today I want to invite you to find confidence in Jesus. We're going to be in the Gospel of John chapter 6. If you want to open up your Bible or your Bible app, or you can follow along on the screen here this morning. If you were here last week, we were in John 6 as well, a few verses earlier. We're going to keep moving. We're going through the Gospel of John, investigating Jesus from Christmas to Easter. We have a few more weeks in this series, and we're going to start a new series also from the Gospel of John. But we've been learning different things about who Jesus is. And in John chapter 6, remember what Jesus just did. He fed 20,000 people with one kid's Happy Meal, okay? That's how he did it. It was an amazing miracle. He was doing it to point out a deeper issue that they had, a spiritual starvation. And right before that miracle, he wanted a break. He tried to get away, but the people followed him. And so this time he's like, really, I need a break? And so he sends his followers on ahead of him across the lake, and he says, I'll meet you later. And he gets away for some quiet time with his Father. And that's where we pick up the story in John chapter 6, starting in verse 16. You can follow along with me. When evening came, his disciples went to the lake. When they got into the boat and set off across the lake for Capernaum, by now it was dark and Jesus had not yet joined them. A strong wind was blowing and the waters grew rough. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus approaching the boat, walking on the water. I don't think you could miss that, but in case you did, he was walking on the water, and they were frightened. But he said to them, it is I, don't be afraid. Then they were willing to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the shore where they were headed. The next day, the crowd that had stayed on the opposite shore of the lake realized that only one boat had been there, and that Jesus had not entered it with his disciples, but they had gone away alone. Then some boats from Tiberias landed near the place where the people had eaten the bread after the Lord had given thanks. Once the crowd realized that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they got into the boats and headed for Capernaum, because they were in search of Jesus. They're like, something is up with this guy and we got to keep going. So this is the original boys in the boat story. Bunch of Jesus' disciples, they're rowing, they're doing what he asked them to do. They get a couple miles in. This story's also recorded in the Gospel of Matthew. And we learn some other details there, like it went into the middle of the night and a storm brews up, and now they're kind of rowing to save their life. They're just trying to survive the experience, when all of a sudden, that's when Jesus appears. And this is not a vision. This is not a dream. This is not metaphorical. It's not a parable. This is literally, physically Jesus walking on the water. And Matthew tells us that they think they have seen a ghost. What do you look like when you see a ghost? Or if you think you've seen a ghost? Don't you wish there was like a GoPro on the boat that night? We could go back and look at the faces of the disciples and kind of get like, what does it really mean to think you see a ghost, right? There is a haunted house in Niagara Falls that actually snaps people's pictures at the moment that they think they see a ghost at their haunted house. We have a couple of them for you. Maybe they look like this family, right? I don't know. Or how about this guy? Look at those eyes. Like, wow. Like, I don't know. You tell me. Or this woman, I don't know how she got her leg up there, but boy, she was scared. What do you think they looked like? They're scared. They're terrified. And it's Jesus. And look what he says to him. We're going to use Matthew's account. In Matthew 14:27, he says, take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. Take courage. It's I. Don't be afraid. This is what Jesus says to some fearful followers a couple thousand years ago, and I think he wants to repeat it to you today. Are you afraid? Because fear will crush your confidence. But Jesus will step into the middle of that fear and says, hey, listen, I want to be your confidence. Instead of fear crushing your confidence, what if I was your confidence that could crush your fear? And so if he's your confidence, you're in the right spot. You can look at your fear in the eyes and say, get behind me, man. Because I have nothing to fear. Why? Because Jesus is my confidence. And in him, look what I've got. I've got provision. I've got power. I've got his presence. And I've got peace. Fear, man. Fear wants you to forget what he's done. Fear, it wants you to forget who's in charge. Fear wants you to forget that you're not alone. Fear wants you to forget the promise, but you can say, no, I'm going to claim it. Because I'm with Jesus. And I've got a track record of what he's done. I've seen his power in my life. I know he's with me even if it isn't what I want to go through. And it's elevating my perspective to have a different view on the problems that I have in life. This is what it means to have Jesus as your confidence.